Hello, I'm Richard Ridge for Broadway World. Modern Family star Jesse Tyler Ferguson has returned to Broadway in Becky Mode's comedy Fully Committed, directed by Jason Moore. Jesse plays 40 hilarious characters, and I caught up with him on opening night. First of all, welcome back to Broadway, my friend.
Thank you.
How does it feel?
This was a really exhilarating night. It was very exciting. I have a lot of my spelling bee friends here, which really thrilled me. You know, there's nothing like an opening night on Broadway, but when you've been away for 10 years and it's what you really love doing, it's really overwhelming.
It was so amazing. Not only an opening night, it's also, like you said, a spelling bee reunion. Everybody was here.
Yeah, Bill Finn, a lot of my spelling bee cast came out, so it was really sweet to see them all.
You are razor sharp perfection. I don't think I told you that the other day. I mean, I was talking to Jason. When you started working on this, was it the characters first, what they were going to sound and look like?
Well, we did some rewrites too, so a lot of the new material was new. We sort of started with accents, and I worked with Kate Wilson, who's a dialect coach at Juilliard, and she sort of helped me with like the big broad strokes of like a French accent. And listen, they're not perfect. I'm not gonna like pass as like a French guy by any means, but I sort of realized that the luxury of this play is you can paint in big, broad strokes, and I can sound like I'm like at a Ratatouille for a little minute, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. So, but it's just a fun play, and it's been so much fun working on. But the voices sort of came first, and the physicality came second. And I'm just finding fun things as I keep running the show.
It is opening night. How do you feel tonight?
Oh, I'm so happy and thrilled. The show went great, and Jesse really nailed his performance. You know, it's a big virtuosic thing, and I just had a blast sitting back and watching him, and I think the audience did too. I'm thrilled.
I love this production. I think I told you before, I saw it originally downtown. I just love what you did. The updates that Becky did, just bringing it into the now, and just the whole look of the show. What was it like for you working on this?
It was a blast to work on it. Mostly, the script is so funny, what Becky wrote, and it is true. It's a show about New York, right? And restaurants in New York. We've all had that experience, so to bring that to it. But also, really, Jesse is such a mathematical, smart directorial mind, and to watch him work and create each of these characters, each of these accents, decide how much they weighed and what they were wearing, it's very specific, and I think that comes across in his performance. And it's just fun to watch an actor work like that, you know? You don't get to see that kind of work very often.
Broadway, how does it feel?
Crazy. Sort of can't believe I'm here. It's amazing.
We spoke early on during the rehearsal process for Broadway. What was the whole rehearsal process like? The rewrites are brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was a dream to collaborate with Jason and Jesse. They're such gifted comedians and collaborators, so it was, you know, it was my privilege, really. I did some on my own, and then I would bring it into the rehearsal hall, and they would improve things. We would discuss what worked, what didn't work. I would go back, we would workshop it, but they were so they were so open to changes and so supportive, and such great creative partners. You can't imagine, or maybe you can.
Let's talk about your leading man. I mean, how incredible is Jesse?
He's incredible. I feel like his mother, and I feel like it's wrong for me to quell about him, but I just feel like he's one of the most gifted comedians of our generation. Does that sound too corny? And I feel like he has such a tremendous heart that shines through the central character that you just sort of fall in love with him. I felt that way the first time he read the play in the producer's apartment, and my feeling has only grown. I think he's magical, and I feel so fortunate to have been able to work with him.
Writing the music for this show, I mean, how did you come up with what you wanted to sound like?
You know, working with Jason, and he's very, very open to a process, and he wants to go down a process. And we worked with him on movies before. We worked with him on Sisters, and we just started to toss around like, what would this feel like? What kind of music does it want to be? And trading a lot of different things, Euro pop, bistro kind of things, and they all felt like it doesn't feel like it has quite enough energy. And he knew he wanted to stop, you know, something big. And I said, well, let's just do something that feels New York and fast and funny, and there'll be sound of restaurant sounds underneath. Jesse's playing like 40 characters. Let's make a piece of music that's as busy as Jesse's going to be once the curtain comes up. And I think that's kind of what we ended up doing. So.
Did it change during the rehearsal process, like when you got into previews at all?
I have to say, and this is the first time things haven't changed. It didn't change very much, and everybody really liked it. And the only thing that changed was, the length of it here and there, and how much music, how dramatic the music was going to be when the curtain rose. That one piece. That's what we went back and forth on. But yeah, and of course in the beginning you use like a mock-up of it, and we didn't have the real musicians until like a week ago, and that really makes it feel like something special, I think.
I love this, and I loved your set.
Thank you.
How did you and Jason decide on what the set was going to look like?
Well, there's sort of two worlds to it. One is the very kind of realistic, or I shouldn't say realistic, but the sort of non-public space of the reservations room in the basement. And that's the place that's full of water pipes and things like that. And then, Jason and I really wanted to do something kind of fanciful that reflected the grandeur and the opulence and the wealth of the restaurant itself. And so I created this thing that I refer to as the tornado of chairs, which is really based on the work of the sculptor Ai Weiwei, this installation artist. And he did some amazing, he did all these great things with bicycles, but he also did these great things with chairs and stools. And so that's where that idea came from. And it's a little bit of a visual pun on the fact that everybody's battling for a seat at this restaurant. And so there's a kind of sculpture of seats. And then all the way upstage is a wine wall, which has 900 wine bottles in it. It was fun.
He is razor sharp. I was sitting there the other day and I was like, wow. So what did you work on first? Was it the voices? Was it each character, what they were going to look and sound like?
Yeah, what we started with first is Jesse felt strongly, and we both agreed about wanting all the characters to be as different from each other as possible. In the original production, they were a little more all from the Upper East Side or Upper West Side. We wanted more of a cross-section of the country, thinking that this chef has a celebrity following, so people come from all over. Also, Jesse grew up kind of in Albuquerque, and the Midwest, so he has a different set of funny, and accents and things that he can do. So we just sat down and we kind of put out different cards and said, what about this paint color? What about this paint color? And, a depressed assistant became a harried assistant who wasn't very good at her job. So some of it was thoughtful and some of it was just playing around to see what would be funny.
So what was the rehearsal room like? Was it just like you and him in there?
Yeah, the rehearsal room, and we actually started rehearsing really early on his weeks after so it was just the two of us. There was nobody else there. Jesse and I were friends, so we had to make sure that we stayed disciplined and focused, which we did most of the time. But it was really fun, and for a director to be with the one actor, it's actually quite intimate. Usually you're standing back and letting two people have their moment, but it's all about giving them sort of feedback, and that was really enjoyable and rewarding for me, and it made me feel connected to him, and it's fun to feel connected to an actor of that talent.
So what was it like that first performance when you had an audience?
The first performance we had an audience, I brought people into the rehearsal room because the rhythm of the show is so much about phone rings and stuff, and I knew that if we waited till we suddenly had 700 people for the first time, the whole thing would kind of get off the track. Yeah. So we had one audience with 30 people, one with 60, one with 90. We kept adding so that we had a sense. So in a way, when we got to our first preview, we had a pretty good sense of the rhythm of it, so it wasn't quite such a jarring turn. So the answer is it was a lot of fun, but it was also, thank goodness, wasn't too surprising.
Jason's really good about not laughing when things aren't funny. Like, he doesn't courtesy laugh me, which I really thank him for. He gives me a good sort of barometer of what's funny and what's working and what's not. But it's a very intimate experience working with someone alone in a room for so much of the time. So we were really excited to get into the preview process, and I did a lot of my big work in front of an audience, which I don't think I usually feel like I arrive at the first preview really knowing what I want to do, and I wasn't sure. So I really used this preview process to tone these characters. Not great for the message boards, for the people who saw those early performances and who decided they wanted to make decisions about my performance. I was still working, and that was part of my rehearsal process, and I'm really proud of what we did with it.
I asked Michael Urie, I'm like, what was it like for you? He said, Richie, that first performance, I realized there was no one else up there but me, and I had to just go for it.
Yeah, it's terrifying when you're the only person on stage. No one's there to help you out if you lose your place.
I talked to your mom the other day, and she said you were the shyest kid growing up. How old were you when you came out of your shell?
How old am I now? 40? About 39. Yeah.
And just being back on Broadway, you're in the Lyceum, the most beautiful theater on Broadway. It's just you up there. I mean, is it all surreal?
It's very surreal. Every time I walk out on stage and I hear the audience respond to seeing me, I get very overwhelmed, and I have to sort of take a moment each night and, really live in that moment, and I'm very grateful.
So when you took your bow tonight back on Broadway, do you remember what you were thinking?
Yeah, I remember to stay calm and just really appreciate the moment and really take it in. And I remember taking my first bow on Broadway when I did On the Town in 1998, and I remember how overwhelmed I was, and it was sort of the same feeling. So it's good to know that that magic is still there.